The term AI, for some, conjures immediate doom and gloom.
It was always met with skepticism and a little bit of fear, total distrust.
But for those in the legal world, AI has been around longer than you may think.
AI has been around for a long time, and we are using AI on your case right now.
On Outside In, we're talking to Jeff Grogan, IST's National Director of Training, about demystifying the AI elephant in the room.
Hey, look, this is just a tool. You're still the person who's doing the work. You're still the person who's going to make the judgments as to whether or not the document should be produced or shouldn't be produced.
Get to know how it's currently in use and what the future of generative AI in litigation may look like on Outside In. Jeff, how's it going today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. So to begin with, can you give us a little background of how you got into the legal industry?
So I was working in social work, actually, and was responsible for the school where I worked, their website. And a friend of mine saw the work I'd done on that website and asked me to come and interview for an IT position at a very large international law firm. And somehow or another, I managed to talk my way in. And so I spent about 5 years as an IT help desk person there. And then I was asked to transition over into Litsport because of the work I was doing on databases for the firm.
I can totally relate to that. When I interviewed at IST, I didn't know how to use any of the design products they had. I went to Barnes & Noble, bought a book, had a little CD-ROM, learned it in about 10 seconds, and then prayed I could pass the interview.
Yeah.
Apparently I did. So yeah, sometimes you just gotta fake it till you make it.
Right, and those are fun jobs because you're learning the whole time you're on the job.
Absolutely, cool. So in your career of training and supporting legal professionals, even formally teaching CIS for college students, how can you summarize an attorney's reaction to the term artificial intelligence?
Most of the time, it is one of total distrust. So in my experience working at a couple of different law firms, anytime that we would try to implement the use of any analytical tools or any kind of advanced technology, it was always met with skepticism and a little bit of fear. So there was a sense of no trust for what the technology would do.
So I find that interesting because obviously AI means one thing now, but AI's essentially been in the legal industry for decades as what they would call TAR.
That's right. Predictive coding was my first experience with it, and everybody who was doing document review was terrified of it because the initial fear was, oh, it's gonna put us out of work, or it's gonna be inaccurate, and we're gonna get sanctioned by the courts. Any number of things that they didn't like about it or didn't trust the technology, and you still see that today. I mean, even now, where it has been called TAR 1, and now there's TAR 2. So you have a bunch of different tools that have been around for a very long time that at one time were called AI. I was reading a paper the other day from 2015, and they were referring to TAR as AI. They were referring to several other analytical tools that we take for granted now as AI. So it's an interesting evolution of how AI has come into the mainstream again.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we've brought you here today to talk about AI and kind of the evolution of it and where it was before and where it is now. So when you're talking to clients, how are you explaining what we would consider AI today to them?
So the first thing I want to do is I want to ask them, what do they know? What do they think? When you hear the term AI, what do you think? What do you expect to happen if we say we're going to implement artificial intelligence on your data set? What do you think is going to happen? And more importantly, what is the end result that you want out of this? And so depending on what they tell us, we're going to spend some time talking to them about the tools that are available, whether it's TAR, whether it's concept clustering. There are any number of things that we can use that will allow them to use advanced technology and advanced analytics to get where they want to be. And so depending on what they tell us, will allow us to tailor a solution that's going to be right for them. And it may very well be that it's not appropriate for what they want to do.
Yeah, I would think there's so much news right now on generative AI, ChatGPT,
Right.
LLMs. I have to imagine they have a lot of misconceptions of
Right.
what that can do for them. What are some of the misconceptions that they think ChatGPT should be doing for them?
So the number one thing we get asked about is document review. How is ChatGPT going to help me with document review? And normally what that conversation leads to is a look back at TAR, because really ChatGPT is not going to be something that, at this point anyway, that you're going to be using in a document review. It's just not. Generative AI is going to take human input and it's going to create new data. Right now, there are a lot of models. There are some studies going on about how Chat or GPT-4 could work with a document review and what it would do. And so far, the results are promising, but these are all experiments. And so that's the first thing we have to do is temper their expectation that they're going to be able to log into ChatGPT and do something with it in their document review. Just doesn't seem like we're there yet. And there are so many things that we have to be cautious about because we just don't have a full understanding of exactly what the behavior would be in a huge data set where they're doing document review.
I want to get back to some of the cautions in a second, but can you explain how someone's using TAR right now in document review, and then how they think that's different from a generative AI approach?
Sure. So TAR, there's TAR 1 and TAR 2. And TAR 1 is obviously one, it was the original version of that. And what you would do is you would go in and create a seed set of documents. And then that seed set would be pushed into evaluation by the algorithms that were created in the software. And then they would go through and it would tag documents that it felt matched what you had already done, that seed set. So you had that big initial time investment of creating a seed set. TAR 2 is an iterative process, whereas the reviewers are going through their document review, the system is learning. And the more that you review, the smarter it gets, the better it gets, the more it improves. And so those two models are what's available right now. And they are, they're constantly being used, improved. And so I think what people believe is going to happen with something like the ChatGPT software or the generative AI software is, I think what they believe is you're going to be able to type in something like find all the documents that have anything to do with fraud. And it's going to rush out and find all those documents and bring them all forward. And you're going to be like, hey, my document review is done in 2 days instead of 6 weeks. And that's just not the way that it is.
Yeah, in that case, you're expecting the AI to be able to just based on context clues figure out what's fraud and what's not fraud.
That's right. That's right.
Which is not really what generative AI is currently doing. It can write in tone. You can say, can you make this happy? Can you make this sad? Can you make this aggressive? But it doesn't understand the nuances of this is true and this is a lie.
That's right. And the other thing that is interesting when you look at what people expect, attorneys have, in my experience, not really trusted that automated result, especially as far as responsive, non-responsive documents. And so what would happen even if the technology brought forward all these documents, they would still be taking a look at them. They would still be reviewing them. And so in that regard, AI of any type is really just a tool that's going to be used to speed up the process. The attorneys have still got to take a look at those documents and make sure that they're confident that those are responsive documents and they're not privileged. And so that's one of the things that we as a group, when we talk with attorneys about the use of advanced technologies in their document review, we want to be sure that they understand, hey, look, this is just a tool. You're still the person who's doing the work. You're still the person who's going to be making the judgments as to whether or not the document should be produced or shouldn't be produced.
And I would think that would be one of the key selling points to AI. So I know we've had a lot of AI conversations in my marketing department. It's huge part of the thing. And I had a lot of pushback when I said, look, I need y'all to embrace AI. I need y'all to move it into your workflows, because I work with a lot of super creative people, and they're like, you're stealing my creativity. You're giving that over to a computer. And I have to assume lawyers feel in a similar way, that you're taking what makes me special, my ability to look at a document and see what's in there to win a case, my ability to write a brief on it, to find that smoking gun in it. So I assume that's where a lot of the pushback comes, is that fear of loss of control.
Possibly. I think there's that. And then I think there is also, they see the headlines where somebody has gone in and trusted an artificial intelligence platform, and they've gotten burned by it. You think about the Mata case where, ChatGPT generated false sites. And so now all those firms that filed those briefs that were generated that way are now facing very serious consequences from the courts.
So can you go into just a small amount of detail on what that case was and what you mean by it generated false sites?
So the case, you had a lawsuit where these, I believe it was 6 law firms, basically tried to use ChatGPT to create these briefs that they were going to file with the court. And so what happened was they put in the context where they wanted to look, and had the briefs generated, and then ChatGPT just generated completely false legal sites. And so when somebody went in to check those, they didn't exist. And so what you had was the court coming back saying, hey, what is all this? And then, when the other shoe dropped, or, they realized that they were caught, then, they face sanctions from the courts.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's super scary, and I'm sure people in the legal industry are very aware of that case. So when you're talking to a law firm and you're trying to educate them on how AI can be beneficial, but how not to use it, how do you have those conversations? How do you broach that with a lawyer?
So the very first thing that we talk about when we talk about using any of the analytical tools that we use, we want them to start with the idea that what this is going to do is it's going to make my life easier, first of all, but I still have to be engaged. I can't expect TAR or some of the deduplication technologies or email threading or any of the other technologies that we see, or ChatGPT, to do your job. You have to be able to take the results that you get from any of those and then apply your mind, your judgment, the things that a human can do that a computer cannot, to that information. And then you're going to make judgments there. And you may decide, there is a problem with the way that we have asked our questions of the AI software. And so we may need to reconstruct that and adjust that. If you're dealing with human reviewers, they know to raise their hand and say, hey, something doesn't seem exactly right here. The computer doesn't. And so you have to be keenly aware of that. The other thing you have to worry about is bias, either within the data set or within the model itself. You could run into situations where unintentionally somebody has written an algorithm that contains bias, or they're using a data set that, again, unintentionally contains bias.
Well, yeah, I mean, bias is definitely already there, and it's going to be growing, particularly there's not a true monetization of AI right now. I mean, we're getting more and more, but once you have advertisers and you have people that want to make sure their information's at the top of the funnel and not the bottom, and it's getting the forefront and they're willing to pay for it, you're going to start to see that bias. So it's definitely a fear that you're going to have to figure out how to overcome.
You also have, there's the very real possibility, and in fact in Europe, there is already legislation going into place to regulate AI. So I was reading an article the other day about judges I believe it was in England, were saying, hey, we need to take a step back from this. We need to hold up until all of us as the bench understand exactly what we're dealing with here. because we're just not sure what we're getting. We're not experts at this, and so it's kind of hard to render judgments based on something we don't completely understand.
Absolutely. I mean, the courts have always been behind on adapting new technology, not in a bad way, just in a way that they have to make sure it goes through its legal briefs and its challenges to get to a point where both parties understand it and how it's going to work and how it's acceptable in that case.
Right. They have to be cautious because they're dealing with very real, very sensitive issues, and so they can't be careless. The other thing that one of the judges talked about in that article was that they need to be very careful when they're using generative AI to do research, because they have to be careful about what they put in, because they don't necessarily want the details of these cases getting out into these data sets.
So we've talked a lot about AI and the interaction of the law firm, but there's another component in that, and that's the law firm's client, who's looking to reduce cost, make it faster, make it better, and all they're seeing on the television and their social media feeds is AI, AI, AI. It does all this stuff. So how do you, as a consultant, help your law firm client educate their client to understand the capabilities?
So if we can get an audience with their client, so that we are presenting a partnership between not only us and the law firm, or your vendor and your law firm, but also the vendor and the end client, so that we're all on the same team. We know each other. We start to build that relationship. They start to develop a trust in us, and they start to see the expertise that we have. That goes a long way towards it. And when they start talking about, oh, well, I saw on TV that AI did this or ChatGPT did this, we have to be able to tell them, I understand that you're seeing that, but you have to understand that it's not quite there yet, and that we have to be able to present your case. The law firm has to be able to present your case in the most defensible way possible. If we get careless and we do things that are not 100% defensible, you're opening yourself up for trouble when you do go to trial. You're allowing opposing counsel to have a leg up on you, if you will. They will be able to take advantage of maybe some recklessness that you had. So we want to be very careful, and above all else, everything we do needs to be defensible.
So we've talked, I love that, and it's about getting that defensibility, but they're still going to keep pushing, and they're going to still keep trying to find ways to make it work for them. What are some of the different expectations or ways they're asking for it, and how are we dealing with that more specifically? So are they asking for it to, oh, you can use AI to review these video files to look for people, or you can use this AI to go through voice prompts or whatever?
We have had some of that. What we always go back to with that is, we are just not there.
Right.
And in fact, the technology, to some extent exists, but it's not what you might think it is. It's more along the lines of, we have technologies that will transcribe videos, or they will find action points within videos and things like that. But AI is not going to be able to evaluate all of this video and say, hey, at 12 minutes and 35 seconds, the culprit comes in and steals all your stuff, or whatever they're looking for. The other thing that we can talk to them about is, okay, you keep throwing out AI. AI has been around for a long time, and we are using AI on your case right now. We used it through textual deduplication. We used it with concept clustering. We've used it with email threading. All of these different things that we're using, they are forms of AI. They may not be branded as AI right now, but 10 years ago, they sure were. And so we're able to talk to them about, we are using the most advanced, the safest technology that we can use. We're not going to risk your case by doing something that is reckless and using technology that we don't completely trust to do what we want it to do.
So one of the things I love is creativity in the creative process. And it seems like to me AI's opened a door for people to really get creative on ways to approach cases differently with technology. How do you embrace that in a safe way, obviously, in a defensible way, but how do you embrace that creativity to make sure we're going to be on the cutting edge, that we're not being afraid of AI, but we're embracing it, but in a smart way?
So the first thing that I always do is I encourage our team to get out there and play with it. You know, get access to ChatGPT, see what it'll do. I mean, obviously be safe with it, but just get a feel for it. Understand what it's doing. We want to talk about it on our team calls. We want to say, hey, you know, what are the things that you guys are doing, if anything? Have you read anything lately? Have you seen anything lately? Everybody needs to know what's going on. And I think that really starts the juices flowing. And where we're seeing most of the excitement really is around being able to put together marketing materials. You know, so people are saying, you know, I've sent the same email to these folks. I need to figure out some way to make it better. I need to figure out some way to make my email eye-catching. And so they're using ChatGPT to do those kinds of things. They're also using it for research. We have to caution everybody about the research because you never know what you're going to get. You could get a hallucination where you get you know, something that makes absolutely no sense at all. And so we have to be careful with those kinds of things. But they need to know what it'll do. They need to see it. They need to experience it. They need to put their hands on it.
It's a fun way to do research versus the traditional Googling because you get to have that conversation with it. You get to adjust your prompts and watch it, change it, and you don't have to get to that link.
Right.
That then you're like, but where is this on this page? It's a mile long, and you said this had my answer where, because the way it combs websites. So
right. And I, you know, every time I am on it and I'm using it, I always think about 2001, Space Odyssey. You know,
right.
I think about Hal talking to us and saying, you know, I'm in perfect working order and all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting to see, you know, where we are, you know, as far as these things have gone. But it's a very interesting platform. I know that I've talked to my college-age daughter about it, and she said we're forbidden from using it at all. You know, we are not allowed to use ChatGPT at all. And you know, my initial question, of course, is, well, how would they know? But yeah, they've been cautioned against it, and she's had friends that have been called to the student judiciary. But even at that level, you see there are consequences for the use of this technology. And the thing is, it's only going to grow. It's only going to expand. So they need to understand how it works and how to use it.
Well, I found that interesting that you said they're forbidden. So my wife's teaches teachers how to use technology for a living. And one of those things as she tries to teach them is you have to embrace generative AI.
Right.
It's not that it's coming, it's here.
It is.
And you got to embrace it, and you've got to teach your students how to utilize it as a calculator to help them through the process to learn and be educated, not use it as just the only tool, the crutch and everything. So yeah, so if when you got higher education that's afraid of it and everything, that lets you know where people are in this world about it, which really brings me kind of to that last question. I can tell that, you know, there's two paths. There's this is the future and this is the end of the world. You're clearly on the path that this is the future, and you understand that it has limitations and it has things we've got to work on to make it better. And certainly in the legal world, it's far from defensible. But what do you say to that person that says this is the end of the world?
I guess I would ask them what they thought about other technologies that came down the pipe. I mean, what did you think about when we had cell phones, when they first came out and suddenly we were accessible? What did you think about mobile access to email? What did you think about, you know, being able to FaceTime people? You know, those kinds of advancements are always going to happen. And, you know, you have to figure out a way to use it safely. It's not going to go away. You're not going to put it back in the box and say, oh, that never happened. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not, AI has been around for a long time. You know, there are references to artificial intelligence in the 1950s. And so you have to understand that AI is a broad category, and there are a lot of things that slip into it. It's almost like a moving target. So as time goes on, you know, in 10 years, we'll look back at ChatGPT and it'll be this old broken down thing that people used to use. And whatever we have then, who knows what that'll be able to do. But yeah, I mean, the younger attorneys, people that are a couple of generations behind us, they're going to use things and tools in ways that, you know, we can't imagine. They probably won't have keyboards. They will talk to their computers, and their computers will spit out their term papers, or at least PDF them and send them to their professors, or whatever the case may be. But the technology is not going away, and to think that it's the end of the world, you know, that's just, you're going to have to adapt. You have to.
Absolutely. And based off that, the technology is not going away. You have to adapt. Obviously, ChatGPT is just this giant LLM that's not, it's just for everybody, for everything. It's not specific. IST's got to adapt, and it's got to adjust, and it's got to make AI that's specific for that legal industry. So where do you see those more specific technologies, AI technologies, coming into the legal industry?
So for us, you know, we have some development in the pipeline that, you know, we're going to be using to augment our ability to cull data, to search data, and I think the goal there is to make sure that the volumes of data, which are also growing, we're going to be able to cull through that and find the data that we need, and not, you know, charge our clients to process data that's not necessary. Is the direction I think that we're going. Certainly, as those developments progress, then, you know, we'll be making announcements about those things and talking about those things. But that's where I see it heading. And then eventually, I think the platforms will all have some type of AI that's going to help them, that's going to help the legal teams get through the document reviews.
Excellent. Jeff, thank you so much for coming here today. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I can't wait to see how you work with IST and with law firms to make them embrace AI and make it beneficial for them.
Thanks. I had a good time.
Thank you to our production team, Lance Gardner, Amy Godwin, Lacey Pepe, Jose Ruiz Velasco, and Eric Willis. To learn more about ISC Management Solutions and how they can benefit your business, check out iscmanagement.com and follow us on LinkedIn. To hear more Outside In, subscribe on your preferred listening platform.